So Kaylyn is from the Kootenays. That's where she feels most connected to the land, at home in the Kootenays. And when I think about where, I don't know where you live, but when I think about where you might live, and I close my eyes, first thing that I envision is wind, the feeling of the wind and the sound of the wind. And indeed, Kaylyn's preferred thing to listen to is the sounds of nature. On the topic of wind, her preferred way to get around, you'll have to ask her about this one later. Paragliding, yeah, very interesting. Maybe at a different time of the year, favorite season is winter, so maybe skiing during that particular season. And today, she feels like the seedling that's just graduated to a sapling. Yeah.
It's true. It's true. And all those things sort of intertwine. So again, beautiful introduction. Thank you for that.
Over to you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Hi. Yeah, interesting intro. And thank you for that. It really sort of brings to ground a couple of things. So if there's nothing I like talking about more than finding solutions at the community level, it is paragliding. So I'm over there and we can chat if you need to. I do like the quiet because if anybody else works in outreach, you know that our podcast is actually talking to people all day long, every day for weeks and weeks on end. And my particular podcast is helping communities across Canada figure out where they are on their adaptation journey. So I really like that insight. I'm sort of helping folks who are just starting for the most part, or maybe they're halfway along and we can find some support for them. With my fabulous colleague over there at GAT, we both sort of do outreach for the Local Leadership for Climate Adaptation program, which we'll talk about just a moment here. The sapling part, I'll touch on the sapling part because our program is new, actually-ish, 2 years. And so we are just in that place where we're starting to see some really cool stuff come out of impact and reporting. So I might not touch specifically on that today, but I do want to get into the nitty-gritty of this program. I will go quickly through the front end of this because I have quite a few examples that I'd like to touch on to sort of bring it to ground for folks who are wondering what they can do as their next step. My sticky back here actually says, have a bazillion follow-up conversations with folks from this conference. So that's my next step there. So this is a program from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. We do run under the Green Municipal program, and its title is Local Leadership for Climate Adaptation. Unlike other FCM funding, this is a fully granted program, so there's no financing requirements for this. There is a little bit of cost share that we can get into later, but it is about building on the work that you're already doing. It's multi-solving, it's collaborating, it's working with your neighboring communities if that's possible, and helping you do the work that needs to get done. Big green arrow. Perfect. Some numbers. Since 2000, this is GMF-wide numbers, so these are pretty big. And I'll just bring them right to ground and talk about the prairie numbers here, where out of this big number of project approved, these 27 and change, the prairie projects are 382, totaling $359.4 million, 30% of which is earmarked specifically for rural support. So I thought that number was pretty important. Our funding is a mix between, or our unique mix of funding is blended with capacity building. So we deliver environmental, economic, and social impact, but we do it in a way where we showcase innovative municipal projects and we share lessons learned between municipalities across the country. So not only do we have funding for you to do the stuff, but we also help you learn from each other, which for us is a really important piece. Our funding and resources are available to all municipalities, big and small, and their partners in all provinces and territories. In this room, I think it's sort of important that I articulate that those partners are often NGOs. They're often First Nation and Indigenous communities. This is a big slide, but it just sort of gives you the overview of the types of programs that the GMF offers. So the ones on the left there we've had for a while. They've shape-shifted over time. The ones on your right are our new programs. That's the Local Leadership for Climate Adaptation, as well as growing Canada's community canopies. Again, these are both fully granted programs. So this is the number that Danielle was mentioning a minute ago. It's 530 million by 2031. That's our big target. The LLCA program will support more than 1,400 municipal projects across Canada by 2033. That's our big objective. Our funding opportunities have been designed to meet communities wherever they are on their adaptation journey. We have planning as well as we have implementation support. We have what we call the Climate Ready Plans and Processes piece, which is there to help communities develop a decision-making framework. And then we move on to the adaptation and action streams, where we have programs to support communities get adaptation priorities from plans to action, actively managing climate risks. These are important for us. These are cross-cutting themes across GMF overall, but in particular to the LLCA initiative. Projects that demonstrate excellence in these themes could be rewarded with additional cost share incentives. We know and value that an important step towards meaningful climate adaptation is recognizing that marginalized communities and equity-deserving groups are the most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, and any action to overcome these challenges must center the very people who are most impacted and most underrepresented. I read that because for me that's really important too. It reinforces a couple of topics that I think we've heard over this conference, which I really like. This morning's conversation about building on the community strengths and co-creating solutions. That one really rang true to me. We also had Thomas and the models with memory component from yesterday. I thought that was really great too. And then even Jessica with her equity lens tool this morning, we took a quick scroll through that and there's some really great information in there. So these are big topics, recognizing that people are figuring out what they actually mean and what they mean for their communities. I'll just finish this point by saying a strong application demonstrates inclusive engagement specific to the project rather than sort of broad community themes. Like if you submit something with us, we'd like to see how you're going to actually represent that in this project. So that's sort of the lens we look through for that. And before we go too far into these programs, I actually want to hear from you. So these are my mentee questions coming up here. And I don't know how the technology is going to work here, but oh, perfect. So what I'd like to know is what are the top climate hazards affecting your community? And I recognize that these are often intertwined, but just for the purposes of this example, let's have a few examples up here. What things come top of mind to you in terms of climate hazards? Definitely flood, fire, smoke, for sure. All things we've heard about recently. Oh, I can see it just down here. That's nice. Extreme precip, high winds. Yeah, high winds could be fun, but yeah, they could also be devastating for sure. Okay, excellent. Well, I'm just gonna, in the sake of time, I'm gonna move on and ask one more question. And you'll have to excuse me, this is not usually a presentation style like sharing of information. It's usually iterative. When we're working with communities, we want to sort of know what's going on, know where they're at. And so the next question I would typically ask is, are those risks prioritized in your community in some sort of multi-hazard risk assessment, in some sort of full-blown adaptation plan? Sort of a next question. In order to fit you into our program, we need to know where to start. So we've got, some yes, some no, and a whole bunch of not sure. Yeah, not surprising at all, for sure. Okay, I think we're sort of settling out. It's an interesting perspective. So like I was mentioning before, the LLCA program, Local Leadership for Climate Adaptation, is comprised of two main components. We've got highlighted in blue there, we've got like the backbone decision-making part of our support, and then the empty box for now, because we'll get into that stuff. The empty box is actually where we're gonna do some doing. That's what we call the adaptation in action component. So we've got the decision-making backbone, then we've got, once we know what we're gonna do, then we can help you do the stuff. If you answered no to the previous question, we can actually help you with that. So the main objective of the CRPP program, the Climate Ready Plans and Processes program, is to develop your community's climate adaptation plan, or at minimum, what we call a multi-hazard risk assessment. So we take some of those hazards that you identified before and we put them in a matrix and we see if what the impact or the potential is for those. If you said yes and your community already has a climate adaptation program, we can still take advantage of the Climate Ready Plans and Processes program. We can actually help you operationalize some of these things. So we have funding that can help you develop tools, templates. We've got procedures, budgets, all of that stuff is eligible under that CRPP funding. What we need to know is that you've identified all the hazards affecting your community and can consider the impact and probability of each. Really, we want to know when we get you to the implementation side that we've selected the biggest project or the project with the biggest impact for your community. Once we have a climate action plan, then we can look at the adaptation in action stream. And I just want to share some of the math there. So depending on the size of your community, you are eligible for a different amount under the CRPP program, that decision-making backbone piece. And some of the eligibility costs, which I find really exciting, is actually that we can do staff time for eligible project activities. We can do professional or technical services and fees. And we can do training expenditures associated with attending project-related training sessions. So this is one of the only sort of programs out there that we can get your staff doing things. We can get consultants to come in and write your CAP for you if that's what you want. But it is an opportunity to get some capacity, like we saw in some of those old slides, for your municipality. And before I go to the next slide, I would actually love a drum roll from the audience, because I know you'll all be surprised to see Team Dwayne on the slide here. And the exciting part for us is that, like I said, we were a 2-year-old program, right? So we're just getting to that place where we're going to start to see more fabulous, shareable examples. So Selkirk, you've had your moment to shine, my friends. We're going to move on to there, and we're going to show some other ones coming. I did want to mention that currently we're talking with 45 prairie-specific communities who are working on their community or their climate adaptation plans with us. We have 13 in Alberta, 23-ish in Manitoba, and 9 in Saskatchewan. So soon to come, new examples. Once we have this backbone decision-making piece, so the adaptation plan, we can get into the adaptation in action stream, where we've got money for feasibility studies as well as capital projects. We do need that climate adaptation plan to be sort of approved before we can move into this funding, because we want it to be reflective of what's happening in the community. The feasibility study monies are to assess a viable project that will fit into our implementation program. So we do have a cap of $1 million as the implementation program. So it's a pretty small capital investment in the community, but it is intended to sort of get you started, get something on the ground, and so we can start to see movement. There are approximately 29 of these happening in the prairies at the moment. So again, good news. Not quite at the reporting stage, but little project updates. Samples like this would be things like sponge parks, stormwater retention ponds, wetland restoration, vegetation fuel management, bioswales, things we've already sort of seen over the course of today. And I have a couple of showcase pieces, not based in Selkirk. Chris or Lori, are you guys in the room today? They were supposed to be here maybe. Anyways, the Save Our Seine project, and I was just going to read the project description here, but this is a really great example where, in partnership with the City of Winnipeg Waste and Water Department, we're launching a climate adaptation feasibility study to explore how green infrastructure and water conservation on private property can better protect Winnipeg from climate extremes. This study will engage 10 to 20 private property owners, single detached, multifamily, and commercial, along the Seine River corridor to test options like rainwater capture and infiltration approaches, and to evaluate the financial, technical, legal, and operational requirements for scaling up. The outcome is a practical roadmap and a roster of willing partners to help residents and businesses manage water where it falls, reduce pressure on municipal infrastructure, and strengthen freshwater protection across the urban watershed. So a directly relevant and I think pretty impressive example of a feasibility study. This one is not local, but I thought with everything that we've been hearing about water management, I thought it was a really interesting example to bring to the table. So this one is in the Cowichan Valley Regional District in BC, but it's on the island. So if anybody knows, it's sort of between Victoria and Nanaimo on the island there, around Duncan. So again, I'll read the description here, where the CVRD operates what we call the Dogwood Water System. It's south of Duncan, and it serves about 200 residents. Over the past few years, the wells haven't been producing as much water as they used to. The result has been a strict summer watering restrictions, and at times they've even been hauling water. Just to keep the reservoir levels high enough for basic needs and fire protection. These wells draw from the Koksilai, river watershed aquifer, and they've also seen extremely low summer river flows in recent years, including provincial fish protection orders in all of 2019, 2020, and 2023. Water quality is part of this challenge too, where manganese levels in the Dogwood wells are close to drinking water guideline limits, and treating it can be costly for a small system. The proposed path forward is a connection to the City of Duncan's water system through an existing connection that already serves the Cowichan tribe homes. It's supported by a water main extension and a bulk water servicing agreement. This would give Dogwood a more reliable, high-quality supply, reduce pressure on the aquifer, and support healthier summer flows and wetlands over the long term. So another sort of neat example of what we can do when we get to implementation projects. Perfect. So in the order or the recognition of time, I will mention that we have some caps on these project availabilities because we sort of want to share the love across Canada. So depending on your population size, you have access to 1, 2, or 3 of these projects. And I just want you to keep in mind that they're not guarantees. These are competitive programs. The intakes look like this. So we are currently in an intake. We are open. The next one will happen in the fall. Then again, we'll go from spring, fall to next year too. So depending on the timelines that work for you, we can answer your calls, we can get your applications ready, and we can go from there. With the thought of just-in-time education, we have a webinar tomorrow on some of this stuff. So if anybody would like to participate in the implementation program webinar, you can go see at the table over there. We have a little QR code for registration. This is a code for our adaptation resource library. So our team has compiled what they find really informative and relevant pieces of information, and we've put them in one spot for you. So this is a great place to start. It contains toolkits and access to videos or webinars that were pre-recorded. And what I really wanted to get to, so thanks for letting me roll through that, was that on May 27th, we are launching what we're calling the Rapid Adaptation Programs. This is a new funding offer for climate adaptation projects in small communities across Canada. We're implementing proven, on-the-ground solutions that protect residents from immediate climate risks. These are designed to jumpstart a community's adaptation journey, pairing funding and peer learning to accelerate solutions to wildfire, flooding, extreme heat, and the use of community facilities as resilient spaces. If you head to our website, you will see these toolkits, which have a ton of examples of what you could do under these programs. One last nod to Dwayne. I'll talk about his Swiss Army knife. We have up to $10 million per community to plant trees, 10% of which can be infrastructure costs. We have examples, again, on our website, but of prairie communities that are already taking advantage of this. You can talk to Regina, Winkler, Assiniboine Park Conservancy. So we did a project right outside our doors here. Grand Prairie, Disbury, and even Lethbridge is taking advantage of this program right now, which is exciting. This is our contact or my contact information, or it was my contact information. My contact information is over there at the booth if anybody would like to chat further about some of these projects. And thank you for letting me do a lot of reading, but I did think hearing those project descriptions specifically from communities were really important. That's their best foot forward. We help them create these applications to the best of our abilities, so we set them up for success in the best way possible. That's it.
Thank you, Kaylyn. I really appreciate the specific examples as well.
Yeah,
We
good
have
stuff. Good stuff happening.
Great stuff. We have 5 minutes for questions, and I would encourage all of those of you who are contemplating potentially submitting to, when's the deadline again? The current June 20th?
So each program has a slightly different deadline. If you are thinking about applying for either the climate ready plans and processes, or either two under the adaptation and action, feasibility studies, or implementation, come and talk to us. We'll tell you exactly what you need to know in order to get you set up for success.
Okay, let's pretend the deadline is tomorrow. Sense of urgency here.
Nope.
What questions do you have for Kaylyn? Seeing none in the room. Everyone in the room's getting tired. Second to last presentation. So let's go to those online. Or maybe some people in the room have submitted these questions through the Menti. Let's see what we got here. Kaylyn, if anything speaks to you, feel free to begin responding, and otherwise I'm going to pick.
Excellent. Yeah. The first two on the screen here are super important for me. So as I mentioned, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities is a fund that we work primarily with them as partners. We do work with Indigenous and First Nation communities. We have a little bit of administration work to get through there, as long as we can make that work. At the moment, we have 5 First Nations or Indigenous communities as lead applicants on our CRPP program. So for us, that's pretty great. We have some partnerships. We have some regional collaboration that's working really well together. Working with their partners is, again, one of those cost share incentives, because we recognize adaptation doesn't just sort of stop and end with like where the municipal boundary is. We want people to be working together. So we do even have that as an incentive. And then how to get alerted. Oh, my comms team would be so happy about this question. So please head to our website and sign up for our e-newsletter that goes out not very often. It sort of doesn't clog up your mailbox, but that is by far the best way to stay informed of when that happens. The next round of our LLCA funding is posted already online. So it opens mid-October. Yeah, I'm getting head nods. So mid-October is when we're open again next time. But yeah, that e-news or paying attention to our website is definitely the key there. Is there flexibility with how municipalities approach their adaptation planning? Absolutely. We have some requirements in order to get you into our adaptation and action program. Those are articulated in the program guide as well as on our website. So just take a look there. But what we want are tools that municipalities make sense of. It needs to work for you. So we don't necessarily need it to be in a certain format. We need a few pieces of key information in there, but as long as it lines up with what you need, that's what we're here to do. We want you to be successful. Is that enough?
Well done. No, you're rolling with it. You're making my job easy.
Good.
I want to make sure I touch on the following. For the new program, Wildfire Resilience Grant, what's the max dollar amount for each grant? What's the total available in the program? And I might maybe add to that, is the max that GMF can provide, does that impact the max size of the overall project being contemplated?
Yeah, these are sort of nuanced questions about each program. So each program has specific requirements. So it's worth just giving us a call and articulating what you want to do. We can help you find the right program that matches. I think what we're talking about, this Wildfire Resilient Grant here, is the one that's upcoming, opening in a couple of weeks, the rapid adaptation piece. You'll see some numbers again in that program guide, but I think those ones are really focused on the peer learning opportunities. And then there is a $75,000 program cap for some of those small projects. It's sort of like a tasting menu of resiliency programs where you can get support as you work through them, and you can choose exactly something off the menu and implement that. So we've made it as easy for you as possible, including we have even sort of draft budget numbers and templates for you to action those programs right away. So keep your eyes open for that. That's upcoming in a couple of weeks, which we're very excited about.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Yeah, there are a lot of different programs, and when I visit GMF's website, sometimes my head starts spinning. So I strongly encourage you not to go it alone. Pick up the phone, go visit Agathe, or talk to Kaylyn here at the conference or contact them afterwards, because there's a bit of complexity to navigate. I think there was one question related to some of that complexity and the length of the application. What's your advice for municipalities who might be feeling some of those capacity concerns that came up in an earlier Menti? How should they take the first step, and is the best way just to pick up the phone to talk to you to get support?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's an easy one because we can help sort of navigate so you're not spending a ton of time doing the research. We'll point you in the right direction. As I was mentioning before, these two new programs, the LLCA and the tree planting one, those ones don't have that financing component, which a lot of communities found to be the bulk of those original applications. So we have worked to simplify that process a little bit, as well as gaining access to outreach right away so that we can help save you a little bit up front.
Please put your hands together for
Cheers.
Kaylyn.
Thanks.